Joining me now is Kim Iskian, emerging markets analyst for Stansberry Research. So, Kim, let's begin with the Russian currency, the ruble, falling to a record low. Will more sanctions make this even a more troubling situation? How low can the ruble go?
No, I think the ruble could certainly go lower. I think that as sanctions hit, there's going to be more and more money flowing out of Russia. Although you do have an interesting dynamic. There's investment that is not happening in Russia, but then you do have a large amount of investment, or rather a large amount of cash that is flowing back to Russia. And that's money that's been tucked away in European banks, for example, belonging to oligarchs, belonging to all sorts of government-linked people. And they realize that their money is no longer safe there. So they're importing their cash back. And I think you could really make the argument that it's surprising that the Russian stock market and that the Russian ruble have not fallen further, given all the tension and given how Russia is increasingly becoming an investment pariah.
So let's talk about the stock market. What is the reason behind that, the fact that it hasn't been battered as some had anticipated?
Well, I think there are a few reasons for that. First, the Russian stock market is fundamentally very cheap. It trades at a price-to-earnings ratio of 5 or 6, which is amongst the world's lowest. It's close to an historical low for Russia. So investors price in risk, and perhaps around these levels, a lot of investors say, you know what, this price is in. This reflects a lot of that risk. I think the other factor is that there might be a whole lot of domestic buying going on by these.
There are some pretty good deals out there right now.
There's some pretty good deals, and if I'm an oligarch and I have billions of dollars of cash outside of Russia that I bring back into Russia, I don't want to hold it in rubles. I want to buy something. So what am I going to buy? I'm going to buy some Russian shares.
So if the EU imposes another round of sanctions on Russia, what do you think it would be? In what form it would be? We've already seen, a number of rounds of sanctions. And what could be perhaps the most detrimental blow to Russia?
Well, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see it be made more difficult for a larger number of Russian companies to raise financing abroad. There's already a few companies on that list. I think that list will be expanded. I think there'll be further restrictions on oil and gas technology transfer. I think there'll be further restrictions on arms imports into Russia. What I think that we won't see will be what a lot of people have talked about, some sort of Iran-style restrictions on banking transactions. So, for example, restricting Russia and Russian banks from the entire SWIFT technology. And that would be a massive blow to Russia because it wouldn't be able to send money anywhere else in the world. I don't think that will happen. I think it's a bad expression, but that's a nuclear option.
Right.
I think that won't happen because it would hurt Western investors a great deal because they wouldn't be able to get receive payments on bonds from Russian companies.
So do you think the sanctions so far, the U.S., the EU sanctions so far, they've been effective?
Well, Russian GDP is declining, albeit very mildly. I think that if I'm in Russia, I don't have access to a lot of goods that I had access to just a few months ago. I think it might take a lot more time for sanctions to really bite because these sorts of things do take time, and we only have macroeconomic data going back a few months now.
What about rising inflation? How much do you think, when merchandise prices go up, it seems the general population, the ordinary Russians, are the ones that pay the price?
No, very much so. I think, though, that Russia does have a very high tolerance for this. Vladimir Putin's approval ratings are in the mid-80s. That's incredibly high, and it's hitting all-time highs in Russia right now. So this entire situation has become such a patriotic fervor.
So how do you explain that? It seems like the lives of Russians have become more difficult. Inflation is up. Buying products is more expensive, but his approval rating is still pretty high.
Well, I think you have to remember that 30 years ago, Russia was one of the 2 most important countries in the world, and it fell catastrophically from that level, and as the Soviet Union ended. And in the past several years, it recuperated some of that as commodities prices rose, and now Russia is actually really relevant on the international scene. It's a player again, and Russia is showing that it's still worth something. I think that probably explains a lot.
Kim Iskian, thank you so much.
Thank you.